Okay, so I feel like this has been a long time coming because we tried to film this once and then we did not understand the camera, so now we're back.
Story of our life, every single episode. But yeah, since we talked a lot about shows in our warm up, I guess we can lead straight into it. So the show that we'll be going over today in this episode is Cobra Kai.
Seasons 1 to 3.
Yeah, so it's not like this is based off of an already existing fandom, I guess, the Karate Kid fandom. So we can start by explaining that.
The Karate Kid came out in 1984 and it's about this teenager, Daniel LaRusso, who moves to Southern California with his mom. And then when he goes there, he gets the attention of this big bully named Johnny Lawrence. And the reason why Johnny hates Daniel is because Daniel like made a move on Allie, who I guess was Johnny's girlfriend or something, and Johnny is very possessive. So they're like beefing, and then also Johnny takes karate, so he goes to the Cobra Kai karate dojo. So he's like using his karate skills to beat Daniel up. But then Daniel meets Mr. Miyagi, and Mr. Miyagi is like a repairman or something. But he also knows a lot about martial arts and karate. So he teaches Daniel like the way of karate. And then, he fights back, he gets the girl, and he wins the under 18 All Valley Karate Tournament, which is very important, and he beats Johnny. And that's the end of the movie.
Yes, and it has two other sequels, which we both have not watched these movies, so I can't say much about those other sequels, but I know that Daniel moves to Japan for a bit with Mr. Miyagi, right? And he goes through he meets a really main antagonist. And he also a bunch of these characters come back into the Cobra Kai show, so they're all very important. But yeah, they both go through a series of journeys, and then we have the Cobra Kai show. I think a little fun fact that not many people know is that you know How I Met Your Mother, that episode where Barney got Daniel LaRusso and the actors Ralph Macchio and William Zabka to come in. That kind of inspired the Cobra Kai show.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, they kind of it's basically confirmed that it inspired people to make the Cobra Kai show.
Wow, thank you, How I Met Your Mother.
Yeah, so I guess we can start off with season 1 and how it kind of picks up from the Karate Kid sequels and movies. I think you do a really good description of how Johnny starts the show off, so I'm gonna let you take over.
Okay, thank you. So when we start off, Johnny is like a washed up repairman, and he doesn't really have much going for him. And basically he finds out that his stepfather is just so upset with him and annoyed with him. He's like, here, take this money and never return to my life. And then while this is happening, basically Johnny ends up having to help his neighbor Miguel, who is his 15-year-old kid, defend him against these bullies who are bullying Miguel for buying Pepto-Bismol for his grandmother. And then after, Miguel is like, oh, Johnny, can you teach me karate? And at first Johnny's like, no, no, no. But then later he gets convinced to start teaching Miguel karate.
Yes, and basically when he was helping Miguel with the with the bullies, he uses all his karate moves, right? And he's like, yeah, yeah. And then after they're all beat down, I guess Daniel hears about this one person who beat down these kids, and he's like, oh, what a horrible person. And then they were like, oh, he was using all these karate moves, and he was like, oh, that sounds like someone I know, Johnny. So he's like, oh no, he's using his old moves again. And then he's like, oh, I can't let Cobra Kai come back. And then when he finds out that Johnny ends up using the money from his stepfather to open up his new karate dojo called Cobra Kai, I guess he's really bothered by that, because obviously Johnny did bully him in when he was in high school, so it brought back all these old memories.
Yes, and also Daniel, since the Karate Kid, he's become a really successful car salesman, and he and his wife Amanda have a car dealership, they own it. And so basically Johnny's beautiful red car, it gets trashed by these quote unquote random girls, not actually random girls, and he ends up being forced to go to Daniel's dealership where they meet again. And then there's a passive aggressive conversation.
Yeah, I think it's really funny how Daniel has his whole bonsai trees thing and his whole karate gimmick, I guess.
Yes.
Yeah, anyways, season 1 was a fun time. But yeah, so they meet there, and then Daniel actually has a kid called Sam LaRusso. And Sam, she is walking in the dealership, and that's when Johnny sees her, and he recognizes her from the group of girls who trashed his car, because Um, were they like texting on the phone?
I think Yasmin
Yasmin.
and
Yeah.
Moon, they were just like, yeah, something
Yeah.
like
Yasmin
that.
was driving, I think, and she was
I
texting.
think Sam like didn't she didn't really want to,
She
but
was on
she
the
got
back
peer
seat.
pressured.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
but still, yeah.
I think that was a whole thing. Like she was getting peer pressure throughout the season. But yeah, so he recognizes her, but he doesn't really say anything. And then he ends up getting his car fixed for free by Daniel. And then the show picks up from there, I guess.
Yes, and honestly, a lot of the parts after this is just like Daniel and sorry, no, Johnny and Miguel bonding over like karate and stuff like that. And then we also learn that Johnny has a son named Robbie who's like the same age as Miguel, I think. But he and Robbie are not on good terms. And Robbie, his mother is not like very present in his life. She's like very flighty. So then also Johnny ends up having to like come see Robbie because he got into trouble at school and there's a lot of stuff that come up there from Johnny being like an absent parent in Robbie's life.
Yeah, and also I believe in season 1, at one point once Johnny starts like kind of like checking up on Robbie and Robbie finds this out, he goes to meet with him and he wants to like stay with him, right? Because he's been having some issues, I guess. So he goes, but then he sees Johnny handing Miguel his old karate what do they call it?
Uniform?
There was a word. Oh, it's on the tip of my tongue. But anyways, he gives Miguel his old karate uniform, and Robbie sees that and he's like, "Oh wow, like the father son moment I never had." So he basically sees Johnny taking on the role of a father to somebody else who isn't him, and he ends up leaving, which I think is a really sad scene.
I'm so salty about this because, like, if it was handled in any other way, like, the entire show would not have happened.
Yeah, I mean we would have
Well,
gone on the show,
yeah.
but yeah, I agree. I feel like I think that was necessary for the show to develop into what it is, but also it was a really sad moment. I think in general, seeing Johnny like care so much about Miguel when he's given up on Robbie is a bit sad.
I agree, especially because, like, Miguel, his father's not in his life, right? So he really sees Johnny as this father
Yeah.
figure. But then, like, Robbie, Johnny is his dad, but he doesn't really have that relationship with him.
It's messy to say the least.
No, for sure. And I guess also Miguel and Sam, they don't really know, like, their relations to Daniel and Johnny, but they like meet in school and they're kind of there's like
Yeah.
chemistry.
And they end up eventually dating.
Yes. Oh, and then also I guess Robbie basically he gets a job with the car dealership. So he ends up working for Daniel and then he and Daniel like bond and he kind of has like a father relationship with Daniel.
Yeah, and the reason he starts to work there is that first after he sees um Johnny handing his old karate uniform to Miguel, he gets like pretty annoyed, like justifiably, right? So he wants to do it out of spite to his father because Daniel LaRusso, his mortal enemy. So but then he actually develops a good relationship with Daniel because I guess he's the only father figure he's ever known in his whole life.
Oh, Robbie.
Yeah.
Also Miguel, since he's like new to town, when he goes to high school, well, basically he ends up making friends with Dimitri and Eli, and they're like both like kind of made fun of for being like quote unquote like geeks and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And so then once Miguel learns karate, he starts defending his friends, and then Cobra Kai becomes really popular because everyone has seen Miguel's like viral Cobra Kai like fighting moves against this bully Kyler.
Yeah, so Cobra Kai gets a lot of new registrants, I guess. And another, I guess, important person to talk about here is Aisha because she also kind of got made fun of by Yasmin and Sam's friend group. Like they were very mean to her throughout the first few episodes. So she also decides to, I guess, step up and take control of her life, and she learns karate, and she becomes very good at it as well.
Aisha and Sam used to be friends, but then once they joined high school, I guess Sam wanted to be more popular, so she kind of left Aisha behind.
Yeah, and I guess she just gave into the peer pressure. But anyways, yeah, and so we also see Eli. Basically, his story is that he had like this lip surgery, but it kind of left behind a scar, and so I guess he gets made fun of because of that as well. So and Johnny like points that out when he's in the karate dojo, and then he decides to spontaneously like get a mohawk hairstyle.
And tattoos.
Oh yeah, you can't forget them. And so I guess he picks up this new persona of Hawk, no longer Eli. And he becomes pretty popular after that. Like, he becomes very confident in himself.
In the early episodes of season one, or like the middle episodes, whatever, I just loved the Cobra Kai friend group. Like you had like Aisha and Hawk and Miguel, and just seeing them like bond. I think that was really fun.
I agree. I feel like they have really good friend group dynamics. Like, every character was pretty unique, but they all came together in a really fun way.
But then eventually, um, there comes this party, and then like the Cobra Kai kids, they get alcohol, and then Miguel gets like drunk, and Robbie, who is bringing Sam there, ignites, I guess, jealousy in Miguel, and he harms Sam, which is horrific.
Yeah, well, he meant to like harm Robbie, but Sam stepped up in the middle between them, and
Mm.
so he ends up harming um Sam. At that point, I really thought like Miguel was a red flag. Like, I was like, oh, he's pretty toxic for this.
Honestly, yeah. Like poor Sam going from Kyler to Miguel, like being treated that way at that time.
Yeah, like to provide context, Sam was dating Kyler briefly, but then he spread some really bad rumors about her when like she didn't want to like
Do anything.
yeah, so he was quite a terrible person.
Can we talk about his name too? They just combined Kyle and Tyler for Kyler to make like a popular boy name.
I believe so. That's really funny, honestly. Kyle is a funny character. I mean, in the first season, he was like really annoying, but you just, I feel like I'm just laughing at him in all the other seasons. But yeah, anyways, so, um, I think as we see the show progress, we see Miguel's character go into something from like, I guess, someone who felt left out, who felt bullied by Kyle's friend group, into someone who gets much more confident, yes, but also he learns up, he ends up taking on the Cobra Kai way, and that is like strike first, strike hard, no mercy. So he takes that on, and he embeds it into his brain. So he's like, he becomes very aggressive, you can say. And you can see that because at the end of the show, you have the All Valley tournaments, another one.
Yes, and kind of in contrast to Miguel, right? Robbie starts off as this very like unstable and really um he's just in a really like bad place in a lot of ways. And then at the end, he after being with Daniel and learning Mr. Miyagi's way of karate, because Daniel has been teaching him and kind of Sam to an extent some aspects of karate. He's
Miyagi Do.
Miyagi Do, yes. They found like inner peace or whatever. Not inner peace, but he's a lot more calm and more to his core. Then we have, like you said, the under 18 All Valley tournament, which decides everything in this universe. Like this is like the win all kind of thing.
The defining moment of your teenage life, I guess.
Honestly, your entire life based on how the show's going.
Yeah, you're so right. Anyways, yeah, we see these two parallels of characters progressing throughout the show. Each one is developing in their own way. Robbie with kind of like on his path, like you said, to inner peace. And so he's I guess taking that on. Meanwhile, in contrast, we have Miguel and his path to like Cobra Kai ways, much more aggressive, and like he doesn't want to put up with anyone's nonsense anymore. So we see them get to like this leads up to the final All Valley Under 18 tournament of the show,
where Miguel uses like not so great tactics to end up winning.
Yeah, basically, like first Robbie wasn't even signed up for the tournament, and there was something that happens that leads him to like him and Daniel to fall out because basically while Daniel was training Robbie, he didn't know that Robbie was Johnny's son. But then Johnny and Daniel were, I don't know, they were on a stroll or something, like a little walk, I guess. And they that leads to them going to Johnny's house, Daniel's house, and he sees they will see Robbie waiting there because he wants to talk to Mr. LaRusso about something. And then Johnny's like, "Son, Robbie, what are you doing here?" He's like, "Father, what are you doing here?" And well, they find out what's been going on, and then Daniel thinks he's being like conned or something in a tactic, I guess. So he's like, "Robbie, I don't want to see you anymore." And he's like, "No, please, I didn't mean to like con you or anything. Like it wasn't meant to be. I wasn't on Johnny's side or something." And then he's on the outs with him. So by the end of the show, where we get to the All Valley tournament, Robbie's not signed up for it yet, but Miguel is. And there's some of these random karate dojos that don't really matter. But then we see Robbie spontaneously joining as an unaffiliated group.
And it's really sad to see because like when Miguel wins, right, Johnny's happy for him, but then also like to see Robbie lose, and in a way, I think Johnny kind of also lost any hope of a relationship with Robbie, at least for the time being, in that moment.
Yeah. I've heard some people like speculate about this, but they said that if it wasn't Robbie who was being harmed by Miguel's like kind of wrong ways at the tournament, then Johnny wouldn't have considered changing Cobra Kai. Like he would have been okay with somebody else if like Miguel just won. What do you think about that?
I honestly agree.
I can see that too. Yeah. Like if it was just a random person, I feel like I can't say this for sure, but I feel like it wouldn't have been as important and he would have continued just teaching the Cobra Kai ways.
So I guess in a way, it is kind of a good thing that it was Robbie because that ended
Yeah.
up being,
But
yeah,
also in response to that, like throughout the middle of the tournament, Daniel sees that Robbie's like really embraced the Miyagi-Do method, right? So he actually he decides to open up Miyagi-Do, and that leads to season 2, where they each have rivaling karate dojos.
yep, totally normal thing.
But we can't forget one main thing. At the very end of the season 1 finale, we see a new character come up.
I wonder who it could be.
Someone from the past, someone who was an antagonist in the first movie, someone who was pretty infamous for his teachings.
Wow, I really hope this is just a 1 or 2 season villain because he seems interesting, but I don't want to overplay his welcome.
Someone who also shares the same name as Johnny, John Kreese.
Could not have guessed that. Our bestie.
Yep. So he comes onto the show and he's like, "Hello, Johnny," and then they have a little bit of a fight. And he's like, "I'm just here to talk," and then season 2 begins.
Okay, season 1. I really love season 1 because I feel like compared to the later seasons where all these affiliations and all these rivalries start to get overcomplicated and overlap, season 1 has a very basic premise and a really like simple plot. So it's really easy to understand like what is happening and who's on what side and whatnot.
I agree. I feel like it's not as complex, and that makes it more realistic. Because let's be real, like, in what reality are teenagers going to be like in rivaling karate dojos and taking it so seriously to the point where you're like fighting with your best friends over this, and you're like, "Oh, you betrayed me by going to Cobra Kai," like. But yeah, I feel like season 1 is the most realistic season of the show, and also like just the most entertaining. It's a great way to pick up from the Karate Kid movies.
I agree. I think personally season 1 is my favorite just because it's like a different time when I think about it, right? Everything was just so straightforward. And I think Daniel and Johnny's rivalry is really funny.
I agree. I feel like I loved all the character dynamics there. Like you had the occasional comedy, but then you also have like all the tension leading up to the fights and the All Valley tournament, and I really like that. Like it was not overplayed. It was done just right.
I feel like Amanda's, I think over the entire show, right, she's like one of my favorite characters. But I love how she's just always like, really, guys, are we going to start doing karate? Let's just come inside the house. Like, what are we doing here?
I agree. She's there to keep the characters in check. Like she's not going to let Daniel neglect his car dealership duties just to like rival his old friend from high school, his old enemy from high school. Yeah. I feel like if we're sorry, I want to check my phone. I feel like it's been 30 minutes, no?
It's been
Oh, okay.
24.
Okay, that's good. Anyways, I feel like if we're going to talk about other characters, I think at the beginning of the show, I really like how they subtly develop Robbie and Miguel's characters. I like their contrast to each other. I think that provided a good flashback, I guess, to the original like Johnny versus Daniel Karate Kid. So I feel like they did that really perfectly. It kind of honored the old Karate Kid movies memories, and it kept all those same elements in place. You know.
I also really like the scene where Miguel is like, "Oh, Johnny, what happened all those years ago?" And then Johnny gives his version of the Karate Kid, and I think it's really funny. And I think it helps, like, with what you said about like different perspectives and the parallels.
As someone who has not watched the original Karate Kid movies, I've got to be honest. Like I wouldn't know if at that point, I didn't know if Johnny was like, exaggerating or anything. So at the time, I felt like he was a little justified for his hate of Daniel LaRusso. But then I kind of figured out, he's only telling it from his perspective.
Daniel is so like he's so sneaky. Like I have to admire that in this season. Like when he found out who Johnny's landlord was for Cobra Kai, and he had like lunch with him and like manipulated him into raising the rents. I was like, wow, Daniel, you really like you're going all the way. I didn't know you had this much power in the
I
valley.
know. I know. I guess that's a little inspiring, I guess. He worked his way up. But what did you think about his character? Because I feel like since the show was told from the perspective of Johnny, as someone who did not watch the original Karate Kid movies, I kind of started off disliking Daniel.
I think in season one, especially, right, Daniel is he like in Johnny's perspective, right, he is kind of like the villain of the story, or the antagonist at least. And you definitely see that. Like the story I just said about the rent, that's kind of crazy.
Yeah, that's true.
But I think he did have a good reason in a way because Cobra Kai was a source of evil, but I feel like he shouldn't have like it's been like 30 years or whatever. Why are you so determined to be against Johnny Lawrence of all people?
I mean, to be fair, Cobra Kai was like a pretty vicious
Yeah.
style of fighting. And I guess he just didn't want that to be taught to a new generation of kids, which is like his motivation for trying to stop Johnny. That can be kind of like admirable, especially if we saw the show in a different perspective from his point of view. So, yeah. I feel like watching the original Karate Kid movie is kind of important in this sense because you can't really like know who you're siding with, at least for me, until you watch it.
I think I saw some clips and I think Johnny is a bit toxic. He really toxic in the original. So I feel like personally I understand what happened. But then we learned a lot about Johnny and Cobra Kai and how he didn't really have a good relationship with his family, and that's where Kreese kind of swooped in. And we'll talk about this later, but John Kreese kind of swooped in and took him under his wing.
I agree. I feel like the show is just made up of um a bunch of like difficult character father son complexes. Because like the whole reason Johnny joined Cobra Kai is because of his like he didn't really
Daddy
have
issues.
yeah, he didn't have a father figure to look up to, and then I guess John Kreese wanted a son to like take under his wing, teach all his Cobra Kai ways.
And then you have Johnny, who then gives Robbie daddy issues, and Miguel, who already has daddy issues, and then gets more of them because of his relationship with Johnny and Robbie.
I guess at the time Sam wasn't interested in learning like more karate. She's grown up. She's in high school now, so Daniel wanted someone to teach karate to. So that's why he like takes on Robbie.
I think season 2 is definitely a ride. It's a lot more complicated than season 1.
We are introduced to like a few new characters, and especially with John Kreese being there too as another antagonist, I guess. Like, yeah. So I guess we can just pick up from season 1 and talk about season 2.
Okay, yeah, so kind of like what you said, right? John Kreese, Johnny's former sensei, comes back and is like, hey, Johnny, I'm ready to run Cobra Kai with you. And Johnny just is kind of like, okay, yeah, sure.
Yeah, basically, like, there's a bit of a complex dynamic between them before he like agrees to take on Kreese as another sensei, but he eventually ends up accepting it, and I guess they kind of both work together to train the students.
And then meanwhile, Daniel officially starts Miyagi-Do, and Sam and Robbie are his first students, and they're all about like peace and defense. Like Cobra Kai is very like on the offense, right? But
Yeah,
then Miyagi-Do is more about like only do what you have to do to defend yourself. Always do it with honor, with integrity, stuff like that.
and never strike first, no aggression allowed, basically, just defense. So they kind of have these students training in their respective different ways. But then in the season, because Johnny saw the harmful effects of Cobra Kai, he wants to like take it in a different direction, right? Compared to what Kreese was doing. So he trains the students to be like a little he's like, guys, I know what I taught you, but also we don't want to be just plain bullies, right? So he tries to teach them a different way of Cobra Kai.
But then Kreese,
Yeah.
sorry, finish.
No, I was gonna say, like, but Kreese is like, no, I'm not. What are you doing? Tainting my methods? You can't like be teaching these kids nonsense. They need to like,
Strike first, have no mercy, show them who's boss.
So he's not standing for like Johnny's different ways, and that's why he tries to like kind of undermine him and teach the kids behind his back.
And while this is all happening as well, we have a couple other new characters. We have Tori, and she's a new member of Cobra Kai. And she and Sam have they have this beef because at a party held by the LaRussos at their house, basically Aisha and Tori are talking, and then Sam sees them and they have a conversation. Then she accuses Tori of stealing stuff from her family, and then Tori gets really offended and she leaves. And then that kind of starts the rivalry.
Yeah, so I really didn't like Sam for that because she just went accusing someone with pretty much no proof apart from disliking her. But yeah, I feel like Tori's justified in her dislike of Sam.
I agree, especially because she didn't really, like you said, she didn't do anything. She was just kind of existing.
Oh, and also we forgot to mention the reason Sam kind of already dislikes Tori is because she's dating Miguel.
Yes.
Is she dating Miguel or are they just like hanging out very closely?
I think
they eventually start
they
dating.
eventually.
Yeah.
But I think Sam not liking Tori, it definitely didn't help when she learned that Tori and Miguel had something going on.
Yeah.
And then also, I guess because Daniel wants to, like, have advertisements for Miyagi-Do, he starts campaigning and stuff, and then he has this one advertisement that gets backlash. Do you want to talk about it?
Yeah, it was really funny. So basically, he's his advertisement is describing Miyagi-Do as like all about defense, blah blah blah, taking on the traditional Miyagi-Do methods, the Okinawan traditions, and because it's based off of that, since Mr. Miyagi was from there, and so he basically gets backlash because people are saying like, "Oh, you putting on this traditional like music in the background that's like, oh, you're
stereotypical."
It was like the specific word they used was like whitewashing, like Asian whitewashing, and he was like, "No, that was Mr. Miyagi's favorite like song." And so basically everyone's like, no, we need to cancel this. And he tried to advertise it as like free classes, right? And so once like 2 students show up and they're like, oh, is it really free classes? And he's like, yeah, it is. Come join. And so they start. And he's like, you can start by washing the cars or something like that. And they're like, I knew it was too good to be true. This is just like free child labor.
I kind of understand their point though. Like, I understand what Daniel's trying to do.
I agree.
But if you're like coming karate and then you're like, okay, go weed those flowers, I get why.
I agree. It seems like a scam, especially because it's a complete stranger, right? And they're like, oh, he's a car salesman. We should have known better. Which I think is really funny.
And honestly, a little true.
Yeah. He's quite sneaky. But yeah, that's the Miyagi-Do method. Like, to start off by doing a few chores and then, like, do the car wash. And then do the fishing, blah, blah, blah.
And then teaching, like, like, hard work, I guess, by mowing Daniel's lawn for him and cleaning his car. I guess also there's like an event, and then the karate dojos are like, showing off for this, like, it wasn't a festival, it was some sort of like event.
It was for his car dealership, I believe.
Okay.
But he wanted to take it as an opportunity to promote Miyagi-Do because it was like lacking in students. So he goes up on the stage, and Sam and Robbie are doing this like presentation, I guess, and they're doing their moves, blah blah blah. And
it's very like, sorry to interrupt. It's like very slow, very peaceful.
Yeah, just showing off their basic moves, blah blah.
There's no like fighting.
Yeah, and yeah, it's kind of just I think what you call it is a kata in karate, but it's like a routine of movements. And then, like, the lights turn off, we hear this cool music blasting, and then we see Cobra Kai marching down onto the stage, and all their students are like, and then they're like doing all these big moves and impressing the crowd, and they're like, wow.
And also just like they're like fighting each other. Then Miguel's like the last man standing, and he's like, okay guys, come to Cobra Kai, you can fight like us.
Yeah, so basically everyone's like, wow, what a cool karate dojo.
And no one even cares about poor Miyagi-Do. So Daniel's just like, okay, this did not work at all.
Yeah, basically it's left in the dust. And so after this, Cobra Kai gets even more students because they're all like, wow, we want to be just like them.
And then but however, Miyagi-Do does get Dimitri. Dimitri, we mentioned from the last season.
Oh yeah, so he tried joining Cobra Kai before because Miguel tried like convincing all his friends to join. But then he sees, oh, Johnny's like so aggressive, and then Kreese punched him in the face one time. He basically like assaulted Dimitri, and then he's like, oh, I can sue you for this. And then he like ends up leaving. Oh, and then Eli's or Hawk, whatever. He's like, be more cool about it, bro. It's just like the Cobra Kai way. And then Dimitri leaves, and he ends up finding his way to Miyagi-Do, where it's a little more peaceful, you know?
And then I'm happy Daniel got at least one new student, like at least he got someone.
Yeah. So, yeah.
We also learned a bit more about Kreese, and his life is not really going the way he wanted to after he was the sensei back in 1984. So he's back for Cobra Kai to regain his glory and
Yeah,
come back to the karate world.
basically trying to relive his glory days.
This is so stupid. Like, why can't he just go to Florida or something and retire in peace? Why does he
I
need to?
know.
Why is he so determined to be a karate lord or whatever?
I guess he just can't have a new generation of kids without like the traditional bullies being there. Like he needs them. He needs them to be there.
That's great. That's great.
Yeah, just trying to inspire the kids, I guess. And so,
That's cool. So, like,
yeah,
Dimitri, as you kind of mentioned, right? Like, Hawk was very much like, Dimitri, come join Cobra Kai. Like, if you don't, like, clearly you're not cool enough. And
yeah,
then, so when Dimitri joins Miyagi-Do, this starts this, like, this kind of divides their friendship. And then Hawk is like, Dimitri, how dare you? You're Miyagi-Do. And then at some point, he, like, leads this attack on Dimitri. And it's, like, 5 versus 1. But then Robbie and Sam come in and, like, defend Dimitri. But, like, anyway, this is just showing, like, how harmful Kreese's impact is. Because he's influencing the minds of, like, Hawk and all the other Cobra Kai students to become these horrific bullies.
yeah. Can I just say, like Hawk's development as a character from season 1 to season 2, it was like I was not expecting that at all. Like you saw him progress really fastly into this kind of aggressive, mean, basically a bully of a character.
And it gets worse. He trashes Miyagi-Do with the other Cobra Kai kids, and he steals Mr. Miyagi's Medal of Honor, which is like a really valuable thing and meant a lot to Daniel.
Yeah, so that was quite a horrible thing of him to do. And I guess I don't know. I don't know what was I say. Yeah.
Well, I guess while this is all happening, there's also relationship drama, right? Tori and Miguel and Sam and Robbie start dating, like we mentioned earlier, and there's a lot of like love triangles and stuff going on there, like the roller rink thing.
Yeah, basically, okay, so Tori has a job at the roller rink, and then she and Miguel are kind of on a date that night. But then Sam and Robbie are also on a date night. So they both see each other. And then Tori's like, "What are you doing here?" And then Sam's like, "I didn't know you worked here." And then Tori trips Sam over. And then Sam gets really mad, and so she like pretty much throws her onto the floor. And it's more aggressive than what Tori did. And then she gets kicked out. And then Robbie's like, "Oh no, are you okay?" And then they go off. And so basically from that moment we kind of see how angry everyone is at each other. Like Miguel and Robbie really dislike each other. Tori and Sam really dislike each other.
Tori is my girl. I will defend her at all times.
I feel like that's the scene where she like just tripped Sam up for no reason.
Yeah,
that was like there's no point to do that. But then like at that point I didn't really dislike Sam. I was just like, okay. And then yeah, I feel like I can't say I really like any of the characters at that point. I feel
That's fair.
They all just have their own. I feel like the thing about Cobra Kai is everyone has a story that led them to join their respective karate dojo, and it really shaped who they are as a character because you can see that in their personal lives.
In a lot of ways, you can't really blame them, or you can blame them. But...
yeah, that's questionable.
Oh yeah, and then also Johnny is kind of like, oh my god, Kreese is kind of evil, even though like he should have realized this a while ago. I don't know why it took him so long to finally be like, wait, this is horrific. And he meets up with some of his old Cobra Kai buddies, and they're like, what? Kreese is back. This is bad news. And then one of them like passes away while they're meeting up, which is obviously a very big emotional moment.
Yeah,
for Johnny.
And then so when he kind of starts realizing this, he's like, Kreese, I don't want you to be teaching the kids like this. Like I'm trying to like move into a new way. I'm not trying to teach them who you taught me to be. I don't want them to be bullies. Like I don't know, does Kreese like pretend to agree with him?
I think he's like very begrudgingly just like
okay.
But like it's very much like Kreese is not really, or it's the audience. I feel like we know that this is not gonna last.
Yeah, and I think Kreese specifically has like a really big impact on Hawk because he's like he's kind of just going behind Johnny's back and teaching them like you need to be the person to strike first. You can't let anyone like you down. Like, you need to be the one starting everything.
Going back to relationships, Johnny and Carmen, who is Miguel's mom, they start kind of having feelings, going out, whatnot. But then Daniel and Amanda are having like issues because Daniel's so busy with Miyagi, he's kind of abandoning the car dealership, and Amanda's like, I don't like this. You literally have a job. What are we doing here?
Yeah, which is so like real. Like,
Yeah.
yeah. And plus, like, he's making all his lessons free. So, like, to be fair, he's just doing all of this for free and giving him his free time for that, and like kind of just neglecting the car dealership and letting it, like, you know, I don't know. I feel like Amanda's the one just doing all the work. She's carrying everything.
Amanda is a superwoman. She's doing everything.
I know. She's a great mom.
Yeah, she is a pretty great mom.
So, okay. This whole show, like, is basically for this whole season. They're just like building up the tension between the dojos. And in the meanwhile, in this one party, we find out that Sam and Miguel still have these old feelings for each other. So they end up cheating on their respective significant others, and they kiss. And so this kind of Tori sees them doing this, and she gets like really mad, justifiably once again. So basically that leads to a really big moment, pretty much a show defining moment, I would say.
And this, I feel like I cannot defend Tori for.
I cannot, like, I don't think anyone can defend her for this is quite a terrible thing to do, especially over like one, okay, it's like important, but also like one pretty insignificant moment. So
Considering what the result was, I agree.
yeah, so basically what we're talking about is the show's arguably biggest fight.
The most iconic.
Yeah, definitely the most iconic.
It's at school, and basically Tori somehow gets access to the speaker, and she's like, LaRusso, I'm gonna get you, or something like that.
Yeah,
And then
basically.
it's a whole karate fight between the Cobra Kai people and the
Yeah.
Miyagi-Do people.
Yeah, so basically, like, she finds Sam in the hallways, and then they both start fighting, and I was like, fight, fight, fight. And then Robbie and Miguel are running. This is like a whole big thing. They're running to like prevent their girlfriends from like fighting each other, and then they don't know what the fight is about at the time, and I don't think Sam does either, right?
I don't know, but
Yeah.
they start fighting.
Yeah.
Robbie and Miguel, they
Yeah.
start fighting each other.
Yeah, and then all the Cobra Kai kids are like, hey, let's go back up our people. And then the Miyagi-Do kids, well, there's not many of them.
Shady.
Wait, actually, are there any?
I think there's a bit more.
Yeah, okay.
Because there's some people who switched from Cobra Kai to Miyagi-Do after Kreese.
Right, so yeah, there's a few of them, and they're getting up on Sam's side. And yeah, it leads to this whole big scene.
Where Robbie just ends up accidentally, when they're fighting, he throws Miguel off the stairwell and puts him into a coma.
And this was after Miguel like was in a position to like basically finish him off, but he didn't. He's like showing mercy, you know, he's changing his ways. It shows that Johnny's word was sticking in his head, but then Robbie's like, not today. He throws him over the stairwell.
Yep, so Miguel is in a coma, everyone is distressed. Amanda's like, Daniel, look what you've done, you have to close down Miyagi-Do. Daniel's like, okay, fine. But what Johnny finds out is that Kreese, behind his back, he like buys Cobra Kai. I don't really know, like he buys the area. I don't really know, but he does something behind his back to end up being like the full runner of Cobra Kai.
I think it's because the landlord got involved in it again, right? It's always the landlord. Anyways, like Robbie's basically a fugitive now because he threw someone over the stairwell and broke his he basically his legs were in paralysis because of it. And so he's on the run. He just runs away.
So it definitely ends off on the craziest note.
Yeah. Like, even before watching the show, this was how I kind of knew about it. I didn't know the scene was from Cobra Kai, but I saw it when I was on TikTok, and it just came up.
I think it's so crazy how all this is happening, and not one teacher before is like, hey, maybe we shouldn't be doing this. Is there no teachers in the school? Like, where is everyone?
In season 3, they end up like justifying by saying, oh, teachers aren't allowed to get involved when kids are fighting each other. Like, it's against the rules. And then, like Stingray tries to like picking up the fight, but well, not really. He tries to like just based on his karate ways Oh, Stingray is like another Cobra Kai member. He basically fights the kids.
Oh yeah, he's like a grown adult, but he's just
Yeah,
also like friends with all the kids and having parties and stuff.
which is like really creepy. But yeah, he also like he's wanted to stay away from kids from that point on. And yeah, things just really end off on a crazy note, like you said.
Um, I think season two, it's definitely quite a wild ride from season one because you have all these new people and all these new dynamics. I feel like this is when the Sam hate train started because anyone in the Cobra Kai fandom knows that there is a lot of people don't like Sam, and I feel like a lot of that hate originated in season two and then it intensified in the later seasons. But I feel like this season planted the seeds for the haters.
I think it's especially because we get another contrast to Sam, Tori, and then most people like Tori. So that kind of also like intensified the Sam hate train.
Do you consider yourself a part of the Sam hate train?
I think the first few seasons I didn't mind her as much. Honestly, like thinking about it, I really didn't mind her that much. Not as much as all the haters online do. What about you?
Okay, I will admit, a while back, like a while back, I was a Sam hater. But when we were rewatching the show, I feel like yeah, she does do stuff that is annoying and self-centered, but she's not like the worst character in this show. I feel like all the time people are like, "Oh, I just hate Sam. She's the worst. She's blah blah blah." But I feel like yeah, she does some annoying self-centered things, but she's not the worst person. She's definitely not like a villain or anything. So
Yeah, I feel like especially when they do that, they're overlooking a lot of other terrible things that other characters did. So I feel like in comparison, Sam's actions just are very mild.
yeah, but I do understand when people are like, "Oh, she is very like self-centered or she doesn't
Yeah.
consider others," because she definitely does that. Yeah.
But also as a teenager, I feel like that's kind of realistic. Like you
Yeah.
have to keep in mind their ages. You can't expect them to be like, really these perfect characters that always look out for everybody else. So I can see that. Yeah. But overall, I feel like in terms of entertainment, season two is arguably like the most intense and entertaining just because I kind of watched it all in like one sitting, all of it.
You said the same thing about season one.
Did I?
You were like, season one is the most something and entertaining season because of its.
Okay, I think season one is the best season, in my opinion, but season two is the most entertaining.
Okay.
What about you?
I I think I agree with you. But I like season two and season three. So I feel like for me it's like one is my favorite, but I do like two and three a lot too.
I think it's mostly because of that like school fight scene that it got so intense and like all the work that they put into it. So I feel like I just really liked the effort and also it was very entertaining to watch as someone who does taekwondo. So I was like trying to compare, maybe see, I guess, the differences.
Do you think that as a taekwondo watcher, the taekwondo places in the valley are just watching all this unfold and just chilling?
I think so. I feel like I don't know. This is just so intense.
Is there anything else about season two you liked? I like that Johnny and Danny were like kind of
Danny.
Danny, Johnny and Daniel were like teaming up a bit more, and we got to see them working together against Kreese. Well, not really. It was mostly like at the end, but I
Yeah,
liked
yeah.
seeing them at least have a common enemy and
I
kind of
agree.
working together in that sense.
I like that whole plot whenever there's like I guess mortal enemies coming together against another even worse enemy. So yeah, I like seeing their relationship dynamics throughout the season. And I would like to see more of their scenes.
Is there anything you want to add to season two before we move on?
No, I don't think so.
Okay, then season three, here we come. Okay, so season three starts with Johnny basically becoming a depressed alcoholic, while Daniel is a struggling car dealership owner, and Robbie is MIA.
Basically, the whole reason for this is because once again, if you remember from season two, Robbie kicked Miguel off the stairwell, so that was obviously like illegal, not good. And then he was on the run. And then Daniel, he got really bad PR because his daughter was one of the main girls involved in the school fight. And also because of the school fight, Tori got expelled and Sam got suspended for like 3 days. So that's where we kick everything off.
So then, um, while 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 Johnny is going through it and Daniel is also going through it, they do team up to go find Robbie because they both do are like worried for him. But once they find him, he ends up being put in juvenile detention.
Yeah, so he feels betrayed by Daniel because Daniel was like getting him to like I guess he basically set him up to turn himself in so he could get a reduced sentence. And then he ends up in juvie and he's like feeling betrayed by everyone. He doesn't like Mr. LaRusso, and then because his dad actually scheduled a visit, Johnny, and he didn't end up showing because he was with Miguel's family since Miguel was in a coma. Well, Robbie felt like, oh, he can't even visit me for one day, so he also was angry about that. And this is like the perfect time, I guess, for Kreese to come in and get him in a vulnerable position.
Kreese is so annoying, but yeah, Kreese like slithers in. It's like Robbie, you the only person you can protect is yourself and all of that stuff.
Yeah,
So then while this is happening, Miguel awakes from his coma and Johnny helps him learn how to walk again. So I feel like that montage was really nice to see. I remember
I
you were
agree.
saying that you thought this happened too quickly.
It was a very speedy recovery. And also, this reminded me of how Johnny got rid of his asthma. It just happened instantaneously.
I love how it's been. We're on season 3, and Miguel's asthma has not been present for
It
like
was
two whole
for like
seasons.
one episode,
Yeah.
and it's gone.
Um, I think also, I guess it's more to mention that after Miguel got hurt, his mom was like, okay, no more karate for you. Like, we're done with this. And then also, she was really angry with Johnny, understandably, because, her son got
Yeah.
hurt. But then after he is helping Miguel learn how to walk again, she is a bit more amicable. Definitely not like to the closest they were before, but she doesn't like despise him anymore.
Yeah, I feel like that does make sense because, I mean, if your son got involved in this huge fight that led to paralysis of his legs, then you're obviously not like the person who's probably responsible for it.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Over here.
Okay, okay. So basically, since Kreese has taken over Cobra Kai completely at this point, he's like in charge of the dojo now. Johnny decides to open up his own dojo, and that is called Eagle Fang. And he tries like recruiting his own students, and his first student is Miguel, because obviously they have like this close father-son relationship. So Miguel decides to join Johnny's Eagle Fang, and then they recruit more members.
While this is happening, Daniel just goes to Japan. He ends up reuniting with a lot of the characters from the original like Karate Kid Part 2, where he goes to Japan. We kind of mentioned it before when he spent his college savings on a plane ticket to be with Mr. Miyagi,
Yeah.
as anyone would do, of course. But yeah, he reunites with Kumiko, who was part of that movie, and then the antagonist of that movie, Chosen, he ends up making it up with him, and they're on good terms. And overall, he just leaves Japan with a much more greater sense of purpose than when he arrived.
Yeah, and he also gets his car brand dealership. Remember how he was struggling? Well, Kumiko's friend, she was actually she was working with that car brand. So he got the dealership and everything's back to normal now for his dealership.
With the kids, however, oh, I love that transition. Like,
Yeah.
moving on to the kids, um, the Cobra Kai and Miyagi-Do students, right? They're like fighting again for some reason, and Hawk ends up breaking Dimitri's arm, which is crazy. Like all of this over rivaling karate dojos. Like what?
Yeah, oh, I really dislike Hawk for that because his friend, after all these years, they stuck through thick and thin together. But then once he joins Miyagi-Do, they're like mortal enemies. That makes no sense whatsoever.
Right? And then Amanda's like, Daniel, you know what we need to do. Open up Miyagi-Do. And so Daniel reopens Miyagi-Do, and these three dojos are now competing against each other, and they end up learning that the under 18 All Valley tournament might get canceled, which is obviously a great time of distress for all of them because it's a very essential part of their lives.
Yeah, and the reason it's getting canceled is because of the school fight that they had. So everyone was like, "Oh, karate is ruining these kids' lives. They need to be living normal lives, not, killing each other in school."
They're honestly so right. Like, I agree, honestly.
Yeah, this tournament is honestly like the reason of distress. They're all trying to compete, and without it, I feel like the show would not exist.
Can I ask? I don't really remember how this got resolved, but how did the tournament end up being back on?
They just That's a good point. I like they all enter the meeting, right? And then Amanda gets mad, I remember, because they were insulting Sam. and then Kreese also is there. Oh, it was Miguel. Miguel shows up.
Oh yeah, and he's like, I learned how to re-walk because of my sensei and like
Yeah,
karate and
he's
stuff.
like, I was the one who got her from the fight, but I think karate is like important. It's essential. Blah blah blah. So they're like, wow, this kid is wise, and then they open up the
Sit
tournament.
down, Miguel. Don't do this. But yeah, then there's like a lot of good, I think, bonding moments. Like, I was about to say Janny, Daniel and Johnny. They end up reuniting with Allie Mills, who,
Mm.
if you forgot, was like the girl they were fighting over in the original movie. So they get some closure with that, and all of that.
Yeah, it's at this Christmas party, and also Amanda, I love her. Like she and Allie bond in that party as well. So it's like everyone's on better terms. And then soon we find out once again, no surprise, like Kreese, he's stirring things up. So he kind of like lures Johnny to the dojo, the Cobra Kai dojo, and they basically end up fighting because okay, Robbie's like in the dojo. He lures him with Robbie, and then Johnny and Robbie kind of fight, and then Robbie's like falls on the ground unconscious, and then Kreese is like taking his chance at Johnny, and then he's about to like I don't know hit him in the face, and then Daniel shows up at that moment, and he's like, "Stay away from our kids," and then they fight, and then they decide to make a deal that whoever loses the All Valley tournament cannot like be a dojo anymore.
Poor Robbie, though. I can't believe like Kreese is so brutal. Like, I can't believe that Robbie's still stuck with him after Kreese basically got him really hurt.
Kreese is like the worst manipulative little villain there is. He's always out there just taking advantage of vulnerable kids.
Um, there isn't really much else to say. Oh yeah, Eagle Fang and Miyagi-Do, they like come together to fight off Cobra Kai, and then also Miguel and Sam get back together.
And Robbie and Tori, they kind of like bond through their shared trauma and dislike of Miyagi-Do.
We learn a lot about Tori's backstory this season and also last season, and we learn about how her mom is ill and she has a bunch of little siblings she has to support, and that she's working all these jobs to try and pay rent, and then Kreese kind of swoops in and notices that and is trying to manipulate her as well.
Yeah, like the common theme, Kreese just manipulated little kids. But yeah, anyways, that kind of just leads us to the season 3 finale, which is when
We just talked about that.
oh yeah. Oh yeah, yeah.
It's okay, it's okay. We're both brain dead, I feel like.
Oh,
But yeah, what did you think of season 3 overall when you were watching?
I think it was definitely starting to get like a little more repetitive, and all the dojo hopping was a little I guess it just didn't make sense to me. Why can't they all just like come together? But then we wouldn't have a show once again, so I think at this point it was starting to get a little repetitive, but still really entertaining, I would say. What about you?
I agree. I feel like for me, I didn't really see the repetitiveness yet, but I think, looking back, I can definitely see it comparing to the later seasons. I also really liked how this makes sense. Like, there wasn't too many characters. Like, I feel like in the later seasons, there's like so many people now, and I really don't care about some of them, but they get the screen time anyways. But I feel like with this one, we do still kind of stick with the core central people. There's not really a lot of like new additions.
Well, isn't Devin a new addition here?
Oh, that's true. But I feel like that's just like one.
Yeah,
Like,
like
she's
one.
not like important.
Yeah, she's not important. This is the season where they try to like recruit girls, right?
Oh yeah. I thought that scene was really funny with
I agree.
Johnny.
That was very funny. I think Johnny just being like a kind of clueless millennial about all these electronics is a golden piece of comedy.
Wait, is Johnny a millennial? I feel like he's way older.
Is he? I don't know actually.
I think millennials are like 40, right? And Johnny's probably older than that.
50?
Probably.
What is he?
I think he's like Gen X?
Ah, okay. I see.
Or is he a boomer? I really
A boomer?
No, he's
not a boomer.
He's not old enough to be a boomer, is he?
No, I don't. Okay.
Oh, we forgot to mention this entire video, but John, I was supposed to say Johnny, Daniel and
Amanda?
Daniel and Amanda. Daniel and Amanda have a son named Anthony, who we forgot to mention this entire
He's been
time.
here this whole time, by the way.
Yes, he's Sam's younger brother. I believe he's like 12 or 13 at the end of season 3.
Yeah.
And he's not important for the first 3 seasons, but for the next 3, he really is. So keep him in mind for part 2.
Yes. And yeah, I guess since this whole show's like the principle of the show is a bit like chaotic, I was wondering, like, could you see yourself being in this world? Like just a regular high school kid seeing all these rivaling dojos. Would you like be a part of this?
I feel like because I did do karate when I was younger, maybe in the early days where like, you know, Miguel's video back in season 1 when Miguel's video like went viral, I would be part of like the mass that went. I don't know if I would have stayed, but I feel like if any time after that I would have been like, no thank you, I'm gonna stay to the side. I feel like you would have been a Miyagi-Do person.
I can see that actually. Would we be in a rivalry? I think if I had Kreese teaching me though, like I would probably like go home and cry after every session. I would be like Dimitri.
Aww. Same, honestly. But I think with Miyagi-Do, I would just get like a bit annoyed. It's like, why are we not doing fun stuff? I know it's not the point. Like, it's supposed to be about like inner peace and defense, but I wouldn't see it that way. I would just be like, wow, this is unpaid labor.
I think I can see you kind of having like not exactly a full Aisha moment, but I feel like you would get more involved. Like you would with Johnny, you know, not Kreese. You like start building up to like a very strong character. I can see that.
Thank you. I get to you too with like Miyagi-Do, and then maybe once they merge, I feel like obviously the Eagle Fang / Miyagi-Do, we would both find our path.
But I am in Taekwondo, so I don't know how that will like play into this.
Oh, that's true.
Maybe I just wouldn't be a part of this.
I would come to you and vent about all these rivaling karate dojos, and you're just like, oh, not a thing for us.
You should join me here in Taekwondo. We don't have these kind of problems. I wonder if those like normal high school kids are fed up with these people because it's so ridiculous.
I've seen so many TikToks of people where they're doing skits of like what normal people in the Cobra Kai universe are doing. I think they're so funny and so accurate.
I believe Amanda's a normal person. She got sucked into the crazy though.
I like that she calls everyone out when they're doing really stupid things or really ridiculous things. She's like, well, what are we doing here? I like that a lot.
I think that's needed. It's very essential for the show.
I also think it's funny when, like, what is it, the karate board?
Yeah.
I think it's so funny that literally every other, I guess, karate board member, like every dojo member is like, okay, like, chill, we understand. But these 3 dojos, they're like, we need this karate tournament, don't you understand? We need it.
I think it's also really funny how in the first season, Danny was trying to like, use his position on the board to get Johnny kicked out. He was very sneaky. I will give him that.
That's so funny to me. Like, it's a karate board. Are we really doing all this for that?
Also, is this like a real thing? Like, do we have karate boards in Ontario?
I wouldn't know. I mean, maybe. Is there such thing as a taekwondo board? Of your knowledge?
Not of my knowledge, but I'm sure these things exist. I actually have an upcoming tournament, but it's nowhere near as like it's not like the All Valley tournament.
Okay, can I ask you, do you think Miguel and, well, you've already seen the show, so I feel like I can't really ask you any, like, what do you think will happen here questions.
Yeah, that's true.
But there was a really, I guess, kind of wholesome end with Miguel and Sam getting back together. It's certainly not, they both, or actually, is most of the trauma over for them, like, relationship-wise? I don't even remember.
I don't either. But honestly, can I just say I don't really care about them.
Yeah, same. Like, as a relationship, I don't care about it either.
They were quite boring for me. I didn't really enjoy seeing them on screen together. So I can't really say that I cared about them by the end. I think individually they're interesting as characters, though. Oh, I was gonna say, I have a question for you. So, who do you think is like a very good direct parallel to Johnny? Because there's like many kids we're introduced to, right? And they all have like these difficult backgrounds, I guess you would say.
I think Tori, because she also had, well, I think their backgrounds, their home lives are a bit different, but they both had some issues with like their home life. And then Kreese took them both in, and he kind of manipulated them to do his bidding under this very, um, I would say evil, like evil Cobra Kai methods in a way that harms other people. And I feel like, yeah, I think it's Tori. Who do you think it is?
I I mean, when I was first watching the show, I thought it was Robbie because just because you can see a direct parallel between them, like both of them had like kind of absent father figures, right? So and yeah, but I feel like in my opinion, like I feel like Tori is more of a Kreese parallel and then Robbie is more of a Johnny parallel. But at the same time, I feel like
Sorry, continue, continue. I'll say it after you're done.
okay. At the same time, I feel like Robbie he didn't get as emerged into the Cobra Kai like methods as Johnny did when he was his age. He kind of like just hopped between dojos.
We forgot to mention, but in season 3, there's also a lot of flashbacks of Kreese's life.
In Vietnam,
Yep.
when he was a soldier.
There isn't really much to say. Just know that it ends with him killing his captain and being like, he goes from this guy who like values life to being like, no mercy, you gotta fight for yourself.
And that's how he finds Cobra Kai. And he actually has a buddy named Terry Silver who he co-starts it with.
You keep that name in mind, Terry Silver.
That's definitely gonna come up a lot more in part 2. But yeah, they basically started off and it's a very important thing to them. So yeah, you want to just pass it on to all future generations.
Oh, I guess we should also mention Aisha, after the big stairwell fight in season 2, ends up switching schools. So no more Aisha in the show.
Yeah, her parents were normal and wanted to get her out, so good for them.
Yes, I'm very happy for her. I think looking at what's happened to everyone in season 3, I can say she's definitely better off.
She's not missing out on anything. Really.
Okay, I think this was a fun ride. As I kind of mentioned earlier, I was a really big Cobra Kai fan, and I had this whole big phase. So I guess revisiting this brings back a lot of memories for me. And you're a new watcher, but I think you also have pretty good opinions of the show.
I wish I knew like what it was before because I like heard the name before, but I really didn't know what it was or that it was a sequel of the like a like a continuation of the Karate Kid movies. So yeah, I think I'm a very new watcher, but I love the show. I think it's very addicting, and I'm looking forward to season 6, part 2. You watched the part 1, right? Or no? No, okay.
I want to end this off with one final question to
Okay.
you. Do you think in the next 3 seasons, when we come back for part 2, we will have a variety of new and interesting villains brought from all aspects of the Karate Kid universe who will bring so many interesting backgrounds and details and plots to the show? Or do you think we'll stick with the same villain and maybe one more villain and then call it a day?
I think obviously with any good sane show, we'll have the first with a variety of interesting villains, like one for each season. But we have Cobra Kai's. We're working with what we got. So, I mean, I don't want to point fingers, but I think one specific man in question will be the main antagonist and will continue to be the main antagonist for a while.
Maybe pull in one more guy and then that's it. That's all we get. So yeah, I guess we'll discuss Cockroach Kreese a bit more in part 2.
Cockroach Kreese, the one who never goes away.
Yep. That's a bit of a spoiler, but I feel like it's kind of guaranteed.
It's not a
this
spoiler.
Point. Yeah.
It's just, yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.